Commander Vrax Talmor stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Union Training Academy, his 4 amber eyes narrowing as he watched the latest batch of recruits. 27 species represented in this year's class, and among them, for the first time in Union history, humans. Those peculiar bipeds from that unremarkable blue planet at the edge of the Orion Arm had somehow managed to get themselves admitted to the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. Quite the spectacle, wouldn't you say? Admiral Keswick approached from behind, her scales glimmering under the artificial lighting. First time seeing humans up close? Vrax flicked his secondary antenna in what his species considered a shrug. Actually, I was part of the delegation that evaluated their application to the Union. Physically unimpressive creatures. No natural defenses to speak of. Soft skin, dull teeth, no claws. Pathetically fragile skeletal structure. And yet, Keswick mused, their application was approved. Politics. Vrax spat the word like a curse. The Aldebaran Confederacy pushed for their inclusion. Something about humans being surprisingly resourceful and adaptable. Nonsense, if you ask me. Below them, the recruits were engaged in basic gravity adaptation exercises. Most species struggled with the Union Standard 1.3G environment. It's not the Draconians with their powerful legs, nor the methane-breathing Volgans with their dense musculature. But surprisingly, not the humans either. Interesting, Keswick pointed one clawed finger toward a human female with copper-colored hair pulled back in a tight formation against her head. That one there, Cadet Jasmine Powell. She's performing at the same level as the Draconians. Vrax snorted, a blast of warm air from his nasal cavities. Beginner's luck. They will wash out before the first quarter is through. Mark my words. Care to make it official? Keswick's mandibles clicked together in amusement. I have reviewed their physiological assessments. They have remarkable endurance, and their neuroplasticity scores are off the charts. Meaningless metrics. Vrax dismissed with a wave of his upper arm. Real combat isn't about adaptability. It's about strength, speed, natural armor, things humans conspicuously lack. Your new training unit includes 3 of them, Keswick noted, her tone deliberately casual. Perhaps you will have the opportunity to test your theory personally. Vrax's eyes locked onto the copper-haired human female again. Something about her bothered him. There was an ease to her movements, a confidence that seemed wholly unearned. Humans had no place in the Galactic Union's military elite. They were barely out of their planetary gravity well, having achieved FTL travel less than 50 years ago. Perhaps I will, he muttered. 3 days later, Commander Vrax stood before his new unit in Training Hall 7. 12 cadets from 9 different species stood at attention, or what passed for attention in their respective cultures. The 3 humans were positioned at the end of the line, and Vrax noticed with irritation that they stood perfectly still, eyes forward, posture rigid in perfect Union standard form. Someone had clearly coached them. I am Commander Vrax Talmor, he announced, pacing before them with his hands clasped behind his back. For the next 6 months. I will transform you from the pathetic specimens you are now into something resembling competent Union officers. Some of you will fail. Some of you will quit. I honestly don't care which. My job is to ensure that those who make it through are worthy of serving alongside the best warriors in the galaxy. He stopped in front of a hulking Dracan male. Cadet Grakkosh, your species is known for strength. Let's see if you live up to your genetic potential. Attack me. The Drakon hesitated, his scaled brow furrowing in confusion. Did I stutter? Vrax barked. Attack me now, or pack your belongings and leave on the next transport. Grakkosh lunged forward with impressive speed for his size. Vrax sidestepped easily, using the Drakon's momentum against him, sending him crashing to the floor with a simple redirection technique. Predictable, Vrax said, but acceptable for day 1. Get up. He continued down the line, testing each cadet in turn. The twin Silvorian sisters, with their telepathic advantages, managed to coordinate an attack that almost caught him off guard. The gelatinous morphin actually impressed him with its unconventional tactics. Finally, he reached the humans. 2 males and the copper-haired female. Jasmine Powell. Humans, Vrax didn't bother hiding the contempt in his voice. Your species is the newest addition to our illustrious ranks. I'm curious to see what qualities the admissions board found so compelling. He pointed to the taller male. You first, Cadet. Santiago, sir. Cadet Mateo Santiago. Sack me, Santiago. The human moved with surprising quickness, feinting left before throwing a right hook. Vrax blocked it easily, but had to admit the impact against his forearm was stronger than he'd anticipated. Adequate force, poor technique, Vrax commented, before efficiently flipping the human onto his back. Next. The second male Parker, sir. Cadet Owen Parker attempted a low grapple that Vrax countered with contemptuous ease. Finally, he stood before Cadet Powell. Up close, he noted the unusual coloration in her eyes, a vibrant green that reminded him of the toxic seas on his homeworld. Cadet Powell, he said, your fellow humans have failed to impress me. Perhaps you will do better? I will certainly try, Commander, she replied, her voice steady, calm. Attack me, he ordered. She didn't move. I gave you an order, Cadet. With respect, sir, she said, still perfectly at attention, you ordered the others to attack you so you could assess their offensive capabilities. If you wanted to test human adaptability, wouldn't it make more sense to vary the challenge? The training hall went silent. No cadet had ever questioned Vrax's training methods. Are you refusing a direct order? Vrax's voice was dangerously quiet. No, sir. I'm requesting clarification of the objective. Vrax moved so quickly that several cadets gasped. His hand flashed out and struck Powell across the face, not full force, but not gently either. A disciplinary slap, the kind drill instructors throughout the galaxy had used for millennia. The objective, Cadet Powell, is to follow orders without question. Now attack. What happened next occurred so rapidly that later, when the security footage was reviewed, it had to be slowed to quarter speed for the review board to fully analyze it. As Vrax's hand made contact with Powell's face, her own hand shot up, gripped his wrist, and twisted. There was an audible snap, followed by Vrax's howl of pain and outrage. Powell immediately released him and stepped back, resuming her at attention posture as if nothing had happened. Vrax stared at his wrist, now bent at an unnatural angle. None of his 4 eyes could believe what they were seeing. In his 342 years, no one had ever broken his bone-reinforced limbs. What have you done? He snarled, cradling his injured arm. Self-defense, sir, Powell replied calmly. Article 17 of the Cadet Code permits proportional response to physical assault, even from a superior officer. You broke my wrist. Yes, sir. I apologize for the severity of the injury. Human defensive reflexes can be difficult to modulate precisely. Vrax was apoplectic. Guards. Arrest this cadet for assaulting a superior officer. And 2 security drones hovered forward, but before they could apprehend Powell, Admiral Kezzik's voice boomed over the training hall speakers. Stand down, security. Commander Vrax, report to my office immediately. Cadet Powell, you as well. The rest of you, training is dismissed for today. The walk to Admiral Kezzik's office was tense, with Vrax seething in silence while a medic drone administered emergency treatment to his wrist. Powell walked 3 paces behind him, her face impassive.Kezzik was waiting for them, her office door sliding open automatically as they approached. The Admiral sat behind her desk, already reviewing the security footage on a holographic display. Sit, she ordered. Both obeyed. Explain yourself, Commander,Kezzik said, pausing the footage at the moment of the slap. The cadet was insubordinate, Vrax said stiffly. I administered standard disciplinary correction. And you, Cadet Powell? I responded as I was trained, Admiral Powell said. But Commander Vrax struck me. I neutralized the threat. Neutralized? Vrax hissed. You snapped my wrist. I controlled my response, sir, Powell countered. Had I not, I would have broken your arm in 3 places and dislocated your shoulder. Is that a threat? Vrax half rose from his seat. Enough. Keswick slammed a clawed hand on her desk. Commander, you violated Section 23 of the Instructor's Code. A physical correction is permitted only in Level 3 combat training scenarios, which this clearly was not. These humans need to learn their place, Vrax insisted. They aren't ready for the Academy. Keswick turned to Powell. Cadet, while your right to self-defense is acknowledged, the extent of your response appears disproportionate. With respect, Admiral. Powell said, it was not. Commander Vrax's species possesses enhanced skeletal density. The average Morvellian wrist can withstand 1,800 newtons of force. I applied approximately 2,100 newtons, the minimum required to ensure cessation of attack. Had he been human, I would have simply deflected the blow. Keswick's compound eyes blinked rapidly, her species equivalent of raising eyebrows. You calculated all of that in the moment of being struck. No, Admiral. I reviewed the xenophysiology profiles of all potential instructors before arriving at the Academy. I was prepared for various scenarios. A peculiar sound emerged from Keswick, a rhythmic clicking that both Vrax and Powell recognized as laughter. Do you find this amusing, Admiral? Vrax demanded. I find it illuminating, Keswick replied. Cadowell, you are dismissed. Report to your regular training schedule tomorrow, Admiral. Vrax protested as Powell stood and saluted. One moment, Cadet, Keswick called as Powell reached the door. I'm curious, what would you have done if Commander Vrax had simply ordered you to stand down after questioning his methods? Powell turned, her green eyes steady. I would have complied immediately and apologized for my presumption, Admiral. After she left, Vrax exploded. This is outrageous. She should be expelled immediately. For what? Keswick countered. Following our regulations to the letter? Defending herself as permitted by our own code? Preparing thoroughly for her training? She's dangerous, Vrax insisted. Yes, Keswick agreed, surprising him. She is. And so are her compatriots, though perhaps in less obvious ways. The human male Santiago has already befriended representatives from 4 different species and established a study group that's outperforming every other first-year cohort. The other one, Parker, reprogrammed his quarter's environmental controls to create a more efficient system that's now being implemented academy-wide. What's your point? My point, Commander, is that you have been looking at humans all wrong. Their strength isn't in their bodies, though clearly. They are more physically capable than our initial assessments suggested. Their true advantage is adaptation, problem-solving, using the rules and systems around them to maximum effect. Vrax's antennae flattened against his head, a sign of deep discomfort. You sound like you admire them. I respect potential when I see it, Keswick corrected. And I'm beginning to understand why the Aldebaran Confederacy was so insistent on their inclusion. She leaned forward. Did you know that humans were using crude spacecraft only 70 years ago? And now they are here, competing at our highest levels. No other species has advanced so quickly. So what happens now? Vrax asked, gesturing to his splinted wrist. Now? You will receive a formal reprimand for violating the instructor's code. And you will continue training your unit, including Cadet Powell. You can't be serious. Completely serious. Consider this an opportunity, Commander, to learn about humans. Understand them. Because I suspect they are going to become increasingly important to the Galactic Union in the coming years. As Vrax left the Admiral's office, his mind raced with implications. He had underestimated the human cadets badly, especially Powell. Her response hadn't been emotional or retaliatory, it had been calculated, precise. She had studied his physiology and prepared for potential confrontations before even arriving at the Academy. The thought was both impressive and deeply unsettling. That evening, alone in his quarters, Vrax reviewed the personnel files of his human cadets more carefully. Their psychological profiles revealed something he'd overlooked. Humans evolved as pursuit predators on a world with remarkably high biodiversity and rapidly changing environmental conditions. Unlike most sentient species, who evolved specialized adaptations for specific niches, humans became adaptability specialists. More disturbing were their conflict records. In the mere 3 centuries since developing industrial civilization, humans had engaged in more intra-species warfare than most Galactic Union members experienced in millennia. They called their current era peaceful, yet still maintained military forces and conducted regular combat training. The final section of Powell's file contained her entrance interview. One exchange caught Vrax's attention. Interviewer: "Why do you want to join the Galactic Union Academy?" Powell: "Humans have a saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. We believe we have much to learn from the galactic community, but also much to offer. We have survived and thrived by adapting to challenges. The greatest challenge now is adapting to a universe where we are no longer alone." Vrax closed the file and stared out at the stars visible through his viewport. For the first time in many cycles, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his own cadet days: uncertainty. The copper-haired human had done more than break his wrist. She had broken his. The following morning, Commander Vrax Talmor entered Training Hall 7 with his wrist encased in a regenerative medical sleeve. The cadets stood at attention, their eyes carefully fixed forward, though Vrax didn't miss the subtle glances at his injury. His pride hurt more than his wrist, which the medical drones had assured him would be fully healed within 3 days. "Today," he announced, "we begin combat simulations. You will be divided into 2 teams. The objective is simple: capture the opposing team's flag while defending your own." He gestured to the holographic terrain that materialized around them, a dense forest environment with ravines, streams, and rocky outcroppings. Team Alpha: Grakosh, the Silvorian twins, Cadet Powell, and Thurex. He pointed to the massive Drakon, the telepathic sisters, the human female, and a 6-limbed Araxian. Team Beta: everyone else, including the other humans. He noticed Powell's slight frown. He'd deliberately separated the humans, placing her with the strongest physical competitors. If she was as tactically minded as her file suggested, she'd realize he was isolating her. "Commander," she said, raising her hand, "teams are unevenly matched. Alpha has 5 members while Beta has 7. An astute observation, Cadet," Vrax replied with exaggerated patience. "In real combat, you rarely face evenly matched opponents. Consider this additional challenge." He tapped his wrist terminal, and training weapons materialized beside each cadet's standard-issue stun rifles and pistols calibrated to their species' physiologies. "You have 10 minutes to strategize before the simulation begins. Your team bases are indicated on your tactical displays." He stepped back to the instructor's platform. "We'll begin." Vrax watched with interest as the teams huddled. Team Beta, with its numerical advantage, quickly fell into animated discussion, with the human Santiago apparently taking a leadership role. Team Alpha's dynamic was tenser. Grakosh, as the physically dominant member, attempted to assert command, while the Silvorian twins communicated in their silent, telepathic way. Powell said nothing at first, just listened. Then she spoke briefly, gesturing to her tactical display. Grakosh snorted dismissively, but the Araxian Thurex chittered in apparent agreement with whatever Powell had suggested. The simulation began with a blaring horn. Both teams disappeared into the holographic terrain. Vrax activated the overhead view on his control panel, tracking their movements through the dense foliage. Team Beta moved as expected, using their superior numbers to establish a defensive perimeter around their flag while sending a strike team of 3 toward Alpha's position. Predictable, but sound tactics. Team Alpha, however, did something unexpected. They appeared to completely abandon their flag. "Interesting," Vrax murmured. "A diversionary tactic, perhaps." But no, all 5 Alpha members were advancing, moving in a loose formation that kept them just at the edge of visual contact with each other. The Silvorian twins suddenly broke off, moving with extraordinary speed toward Team Beta's flanks. Grakosh and Thurex continued forward, heading directly toward the first beta patrol. They encountered the human Parker and a bulky Vulcan. Powell, meanwhile, had simply vanished. Vrax frowned, checking his sensors. There she was, moving alone through the densest part of the forest, paralleling a rocky stream that led toward Beta's base. She was taking the most difficult terrain route, one that would slow most species considerably. The first skirmish erupted between Grakosh and the Beta Patrol. Stun bolts flashed through the holographic trees. Parker went down almost immediately, caught by Grakosh's pinpoint shot. The Vulcan returned fire, forcing Grakosh to take cover. Elsewhere, the Selvorian twins had engaged Beta's forward scouts, using their telepathic coordination to devastating effect. 3 Beta members were already down, their training armor registering direct hits. Not bad, Vrax admitted reluctantly. Alpha was using its smaller numbers efficiently, creating the illusion of a frontal assault while. His thoughts stopped short as he spotted Powell again. She had reached the stream that ran behind Beta's base and was now swimming? No, not swimming. She had submerged herself completely, using the stream bed as cover while she approached the rear of Beta's position. The remaining Beta defenders, including Santiago, were focused entirely on the approaching threats from Grakosh, Thurex, and the Selvorian twins. None had thought to watch the water. With sudden clarity, Vrax understood Alpha's strategy. They weren't trying to overwhelm Beta's defenses, they were creating a massive distraction. Powell emerged from the water like some primordial predator, water streaming from her uniform. She moved with startling speed, closing the distance to Beta's flag before any defender could react. Santiago turned at the last moment, raising his weapon, but Powell had already grabbed the flag. She dove back toward the stream, stun bolts flying past her. Simulation complete, the automated system announced, Team Alpha victory. Time, 8 minutes, 47 seconds. Vrax stared at the replay, particularly at Powell's approach through the stream. The water temperature in the simulation was set to just above freezing, uncomfortable for most species, painful for some. Yet she had stayed submerged for nearly 4 minutes without emerging. As the holographic terrain dissolved, the cadets gathered back at the center of the training hall, Alpha team celebrating their unlikely victory. Explain your strategy, Vrax demanded, focusing on Team Alpha. Grakosh stepped forward, chest puffed out. We decided to take the fight to them, sir. Overwhelm their forward positions while. That wasn't the strategy, Powell interrupted. With respect, sir, we identified our comparative advantages. The Selvorians have telepathic coordination. Grakosh and Thurex have intimidating physical presence. And humans. Yes, Vrax prompted when she paused. Humans can endure environmental discomfort longer than most species when properly prepared, she said simply. The water route was the least defended approach because most species would avoid sustained exposure to near freezing water. You knew this before the simulation began? Vrax questioned. I reviewed the environmental parameters when you presented the scenario, Powell replied. Cold water immersion is standard human military training. It was the logical choice. Vrax turned to Team Beta. And you, Cadet Santiago? Your team had numerical superiority. What went wrong? Santiago straightened. We failed to account for unconventional approaches, sir. We assumed the enemy would value their flag's defense as much as we valued ours. It was a cultural blind spot. Cultural blind spot, Vrax repeated slowly. Explain. Many Union species evolved in environments with defined territories, Santiago elaborated. Defending territory is instinctual. Humans evolved as nomadic hunters. We value mobility over fixed positions. Vrax studied the humans with newfound interest. Their ability to analyze not just tactical situations but the underlying evolutionary and cultural factors influencing them was unexpected. Tomorrow, he announced, we increase the difficulty. Dismissed. Over the following weeks, Vrax pushed his training unit harder than any in his long career. Each day brought new challenges, hostile environment simulations, complex tactical problems, endurance tests designed to find breaking points. To his mingled frustration and fascination, the humans never broke. Santiago established himself as a natural diplomat, consistently building effective teams across species lines. Parker's technical genius repeatedly transformed standard equipment into surprisingly effective tools. And Powell seemed to absorb every lesson, every technique with unnerving efficiency. During a particularly grueling night navigation exercise on the Academy's outdoor training grounds, Rax found himself partnered with Powell. The storm simulators had been activated, drenching them in artificial rain while gale force winds reduced visibility to mere meters. A miserable climate. Vrax grumbled as they sheltered momentarily beneath a rock outcropping, checking their bearings. "Reminds me of home," Powell replied, seemingly unbothered by the torrential downpour. "Pacific Northwest Earth. It rains 9 months of the year there." Vrax stared at her. "Your species voluntarily lives in such conditions?" "Humans live pretty much anywhere we can breathe the air," she said with a shrug. "Deserts, tundra, rainforests, mountains, we adapt." "Is that why you joined the Academy?" "Need to adapt to galactic society." Powell considered the question seriously. "Partly, but also because humanity needs to understand our place in it. We are newcomers on an ancient stage. Yet you act with the confidence of species that have been spacefaring for millennia," Vrax observed, not unkindly. "Confidence and competence aren't the same thing, Commander," Powell replied. "We know our limitations, but we don't accept them as permanent." Before Vrax could respond, their tracking beacon alerted them to movement nearby the training exercise's hostile forces, likely other instructor teams hunting for cadet pairs. Powell immediately dropped to a crouch, peering into the darkness. "3 signatures, approaching from the northeast," she whispered. "Options?" Vrax found himself automatically responding to her tactical query. "The ravine to our south offers cover, but they will expect that." "Agreed," Powell nodded. "Counterintuitive approach might work best. If we move directly toward them but offset 15 degrees, we will pass just outside their sensor range." Vrax blinked all 4 eyes in surprise. It was precisely the maneuver he would have suggested. "Lead on, Cadet." They moved silently through the storm, and despite himself, Vrax was impressed by Powell's stealth. For such a visually conspicuous species, humans could move with remarkable quietness when they chose to. They successfully evaded the patrol and reached their extraction point ahead of schedule. As they waited for the training shuttle, Vrax found himself asking a question that had bothered him since their first encounter. "Why didn't you report me for the slap? You could have filed a formal complaint instead of breaking my wrist." Powell looked at him directly, rain streaming down her face. "Because formal complaints create enemies. Proportional response earns respect." "You believe I respect you for injuring me?" Vrax asked incredulously. "I believe you respect strength," she replied. "And now you know humans have it." The shuttle arrived before Vrax could formulate a response. 3 months into the training cycle, Admiral Keswick summoned Vrax to her office. The security feeds displayed his unit in various training scenarios, with particular focus on the human cadets. "Your assessment has changed," Keswick observed without preamble. "You no longer file weekly recommendations for the humans' dismissal." Vrax shifted uncomfortably. "They have demonstrated adequate performance." "Adequate." Keswick clicked her mandibles in amusement. "They are at the top of every performance metric. Cadet Powell has broken 7 Academy records. Santiago has been voted squad leader in every rotation. Parker's modifications to the environmental suits have been officially adopted for all Union field kits. They remain untested in actual combat," Vrax countered weakly. About that, Keswick's tone turned serious. "We have received a distress call from Outpost Gamma 9 near the Verge. Proximity sensors detected unknown vessels entering Union space. The Admiralty wants a training unit deployed as support for the response team." Vrax straightened. My unit, your unit, Keswick confirmed, specifically because of the humans. The Admiralty is curious to see how they perform under genuine pressure. This is irregular, Vrax protested. First years are never deployed to potential combat situations. These are irregular times, Commander. The Union is expanding. New threats emerge at our borders daily. We need to know if humans are truly an asset or merely an interesting experiment. 48 hours later, Vrax stood on the bridge of the training vessel Enlightenment as it dropped out of hyperspace near Outpost Gamma 9. His cadets manned secondary stations, with Powell at Tactical, Santiago at Communications, and Parker assisting the chief engineer. No response to hails, Santiago reported, his voice tense but controlled. Outpost communications are offline. Scanning. Powell's fingers flew across the tactical display. Multiple unidentified vessels in orbit around the outpost. Configuration unknown, not in Union databases. Life signs? Vrax demanded. Faint readings from the outpost, Powell replied. Approximately 27 signatures. The station complement should be 73. Vrax felt his blood run cold. This was no training exercise. This was potentially first contact with a hostile species with first-year cadets as his only crew. Recommendations? He asked, looking around the bridge. The non-human cadets seemed frozen, their training inadequate for this unprecedented situation. But Santiago spoke up immediately. We need more information before engaging. Request permission to launch reconnaissance drones. Approved, Vrax nodded. Cadet Powell, tactical analysis. The unknown vessels appear lightly armed but highly maneuverable, she responded. I detect unusual energy signatures, possibly boarding equipment. They may be raiders rather than an invasion force. Cadet Parker, your assessment? Parker looked up from the engineering console. The outpost's defensive systems are powered down, not destroyed. If we can remotely reactivate them, we could force the intruders to retreat without direct engagement. Vrax considered their input with growing appreciation. While his other cadets remained paralyzed by the unexpected situation, the humans were already analyzing, adapting, proposing solutions. Implement Parker's suggestion, he ordered. Santiago, prepare a tight beam communication to any survivors. Powell, tactical plan for defending the outpost if we must engage. As his orders were carried out with surprising efficiency, Vrax felt a strange sensation, something he hadn't experienced in centuries of military service. The humans' calm competence in the face of the unknown was oddly reassuring. Parker's remote activation worked, bringing the outpost's defensive grid online. The unknown vessels immediately broke orbit, retreating to a safe distance. They are hailing us, Santiago announced. Audio only. The voice that came through the speakers was harsh, mechanical, clearly filtered through a translation device. Union vessel. This territory is now claimed by the Skarax Dominion. Withdraw or be destroyed. Vrax recognized the name. The Skarax were a newly encountered species from beyond the Verge, known for aggressive expansion and raiding. Before Vrax could respond, Powell's console chimed. Commander, I have completed analysis of their weapons systems. They are bluffing. Their vessels can't penetrate our shields. They are hoping we will retreat out of caution. Vrax made a split-second decision. Powell, tactical control. Target their propulsion systems only. Santiago, open a channel. As Powell's precise targeting disabled two of the Skarax vessels, Vrax addressed their would-be attackers. Skarax vessels. This is Commander Vrax Talmor of the Galactic Union. You have attacked a Union outpost and threatened Union citizens. Surrender immediately or face destruction. There was a long pause before the Skarax responded. We withdraw our claim. For now. The remaining Skarax vessels powered up their engines and disappeared into the darkness of space. In the stunned silence that followed, Vrax turned to his human cadets. Well done, he said simply. 1 month later, at the mid-year Academy review, Vrax stood before the Admiralty Board, including Admiral Keswick. Your report recommends accelerated promotion for all 3 human cadets, Admiral Jax Vorn said, his tone skeptical. This from the officer who initially opposed their admission entirely. I was wrong, Vrax admitted, the words unfamiliar on his tongue. Humans possess qualities that are valuable to the Union. His elaborate, Keswick prompted, though her mandibles clicked in what Vrax recognized as satisfaction. They adapt faster than any species I have encountered. They analyze situations from perspectives other species don't consider. They function effectively under stress that paralyzes others. He paused. And they learn from their adversaries. As you learned from them? Jax Vorn asked. Yes, Vrax acknowledged. They have changed my understanding of what makes an effective Union officer. Physical capabilities matter less than I believed. Adaptability matters more. The Admiralty conferred briefly before Keswick addressed him again. Your recommendations are approved, Commander. Additionally, the board has a new assignment for you. Assignment? Earth's government has requested we establish a training facility on their homeworld. You will oversee its creation and serve as its first commandant. Vrax blinked all 4 eyes in rapid succession. Me? But I. You have demonstrated the capacity to overcome prejudice and recognize value in unexpected places, Keswick interrupted. Qualities needed for this role. As Vrax left the chamber, he found Powell waiting in the antechamber, recently acquired junior officer insignia gleaming on her uniform. Lieutenant Powell, he greeted her. Congratulations on your promotion. Thank you, Commander, she replied. I understand we will be working together on Earth. News travels fast, Vrax observed dryly. Humans have excellent information networks, she said, with the hint of a smile. We call it gossip. Vrax found himself chuckling another unfamiliar sensation. I slapped you on your first day of training. You broke my wrist, and now we are building an academy together. The universe has a strange sense of humor. Or perhaps, Powell suggested, it simply rewards those who learn and adapt. As they walked together toward the Academy's main hall, Vrax reflected that perhaps the humans' greatest talent wasn't their adaptability or their resilience or even their tactical creativity. Perhaps their greatest talent was teaching the rest of the galaxy to be more like them.